Hi, everyone. This is Mariah Bowen with the LSMS. I'm the Vice President of Governmental Affairs, and this week I'm here with Representative Thomas Presley. He represents House District 6 up in the Shreveport Bossier area. He is a new legislator elected in 2019, taking office in 2020. So he got there just in time to experience what a legislative session really is never like. He also was one of the few who managed to run for office without a challenger. That's kind of unheard of in an open district. He took Representative Thomas Carmody's place, whose brother is a physician up there as well. So we're glad to have him with us. We thank you for joining us. Representative Presley, why don't you just give us a little bit of information about your background and why you decided to run for office?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me on, Mariah. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the LSMS members. I'm Thomas Presley. I am from Shreveport originally, went off to college at TCU and law school at Loyola University in New Orleans, and had the great honor of coming back to Shreveport and clerking for one of the federal judges here, the Chief Judge of the Western District of Louisiana, Mari Hicks, for a year, and then have been in private practice, doing mainly insurance defense work. In my real life and normal job, that's what I do. And then had the great opportunity to run for office when Thomas Carmody was term limited back in 2019, and had the great fortune, like you said, of being unopposed for that seat. I represent District 6, which encompasses kind of the South Highlands area of Shreveport, South Highlands, Broadmoor, University Terrace, Spring Lake. And I also go over the river into Bossier Parish and Bossier City between the Jimmy Davis and Shreveport Barksdale bridges to the west gate of Barksdale. So a pretty small district geographically compared to many of the other districts in the state, but one that is very meaningful for Shreveport Bossier. And it's been a great opportunity to be able to serve in Baton Rouge and serve the people of this area.
And you have two children?
I have two children. I've got a 4-year-old named Thomas and a 6-month-old named Charlotte. And my wife is keeping them in the background, so hopefully we won't hear them tonight. But if you do see my kids in the background, that's where they are.
See, she missed homeschooling all by herself, just by a smidgen there.
That's it. Got very lucky on that front for sure.
That was probably the hardest part of the whole world of pandemic, was watching parents figure out how to homeschool. I felt very fortunate to have a high schooler because I discovered high schoolers homeschool themselves. It was great.
That is very good. Yeah, we definitely realized very quickly that we were not geared to be teachers, or certainly not homeschool teachers.
There's a reason that none of us went into education. That's what I always tell people. I think I have patience until I try to explain math.
Absolutely.
So Representative Presley, why don't you just briefly hit on your committees? You have a pretty good slate of committees, and some that are very meaningful to our membership.
Sure. So I'm on civil law, which is the committee that dealt with tort reform last year. That was the big issue of the 2020 session. And then I'm also on health and welfare. Obviously, that's important to your members. I'm also on judiciary. And that's been an interesting committee as well. Being a lawyer, I got put on 2 of the committees that are legally minded. And then I also am on the joint committee for Medicaid oversight, as well as the committee for Medicaid estimating, the Medicaid estimating conference. So it's a good slate of committees, and certainly the healthcare side is a important area for our community in Northwest Louisiana, and something that I'm very passionate about. Having a physician father, I grew up learning a little bit about the challenges and tribulations of being in the medical field.
So what would you say was the most interesting piece of legislation you watched this past session?
Certainly our tort reform bills were vitally important to the state, but also just really interesting because they went all the way through. We were trying to negotiate with the governor's office on trying to get some bills passed and get our insurance rates down. So that certainly was kind of the issue of the day. I also authored the bill on COVID liability protection for our small businesses and businesses throughout the state to provide them with liability protection from exposing people to COVID, as long as they were following some sort of guidelines. I didn't feel like they should be, punished in a civil liability manner for following those guidelines. We can't, unfortunately, we can't protect completely against the virus, and being in a state that's known as a judicial hellhole, we wanted to make sure that those businesses were protected. So that was important legislation, and one that I definitely got my feet wet trying to learn the legislative process with.
And I will say, we didn't have it this past session or in any of the special sessions, but civil law also hears medical malpractice. So at any point where the trial bar decides that they might want to change the cap or anything like that, that as well will come before your committee.
Yes, absolutely.
And we will probably see that in the next couple of years if my gut instinct is right. We do spend some time educating on that, but I can foresee that we will have at least another conversation about it in the near future with so many new legislators.
Yeah, I think that it's certainly something that's popped up every few years for a while now, and something that's important to the LSMS members, and certainly something that I keep my eye on. Several of the lawyers in my firm do medical malpractice work and defense work, and so that's something that we're keenly aware of, is the cap.
So when you look back on this last year, is there anything that just stands out as, oh my goodness, I just wish we could redo that? I mean, you can't change history or anything like that, but anything that you thought could have been done differently?
Getting rid of the COVID virus is probably number one on my list of redos for 2020. But I think what's interesting about the legislature, in all seriousness, is especially this year, we've had nearly a third of the legislature was new. And so I took the time to really develop some relationships with my colleagues. I felt like that was vitally important as far as moving forward. And COVID definitely put a wrinkle in the opportunities that we had to meet with the public. There was restrictions on how many people could be in a committee room, and that certainly was an interesting dynamic. But I would say that our group in the House certainly got to know each other better. When we returned back to Baton Rouge, so much of the city was shut down. Our restaurants were still shut down. So a lot of us were staying in hotel rooms or at the Pentagon barracks. And so we ended up having, opportunities to get to know each other over meals by, being together. And that was something that I think was very positive that came out of it. So you had relationships with people outside of, the ins and outs of the 8 to 5 job of being a legislator. We really got to know each other more on a personal level, which was great. As far as things to change, like I said, I mean, COVID was very unique. And I think the legislative experience that I had as a first-year legislator, based on my experience and being in Baton Rouge previously, was vastly different than what most legislative years are like. So that was something that I think will be, a learning curve will continue on that moving forward.
So as we work our way into the next legislative session, what are you hearing about that might be of interest to our membership, and what should we be looking to do?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, on a 40,000 foot view, being a fiscal year, we'll have several bills that are related to our tax code in Louisiana. And there's certainly going to be some bills that, try to change the methodology of how the state gets its funding. One of those things is personal income tax. It's something that I've spoken about publicly and other broadcasts, and something that's a passion for me is trying to fix our tax code so that we're competitive as a state. And I think that if you look at the states that are growing, it's states that don't have a personal income tax. So that's something that I think is important. And you'll see that coming forward from me and other legislators this year. On the medical side, I think we'll probably have some vaccine bills and anti-vaccine bills that come forward. There were several that came up during the second special session last year. I would expect those to come back up in the regular session in 2021. We'll certainly have, some collaborative practice ideas, some nurse practitioner bills, some physician assistant bills. I expect those to both come up again this year as well. But we'll, it's always interesting to see the pre-filing of bills. There hasn't been much that's been filed yet. And so, as we get closer to the April session, we'll have more knowledge of where people are going and where different organizations are going, and trying to get legislation passed through Louisiana legislator. So I think it's important for your members to be aware of that, to certainly tune in as we get closer into March and April, to know what bills are coming up, and to come down to Baton Rouge and speak your mind and let us know what you're thinking. Certainly reach out to the legislator that you're closest to, or if you don't know a legislator, get to know a legislator. We are very willing to listen to the comments, especially from those that are, having the issue personally. And that's something that I think that the medical society, needs to be able to voice their opinion, and the opinion of physicians as we move forward, in order to make sure that your voice is heard, and that, the issues that are important to you are taken seriously, and you understand that the practice area that, or the legislators understand that your practice area is important, and that you're trained specifically for that practice area.
Which I will say, since you brought up the need for them to come to Baton Rouge, we have scheduled our White Coat Wednesday. Our day at the Capitol is currently slated to be April 21st. That is, if we're allowed to be there.
Sure.
We'll be rolling over kind of the plans from last year to this year, and keeping our fingers crossed that we'll have enough people vaccinated by then to have made a difference. So I guess, any thoughts on how they go forward with doing a day at the Capitol and communicating with y'all?
Yeah, I think that that's great that y'all are coming down. I would reach out to your representative from your district and let them know that you're coming. Share, whatever bills are important to you, and ask them for a few minutes of their time. A lot of the day that we are, I don't know what day of the week it is on the 21st, but I will say that, we all are in committee meetings each morning, and then we generally go into session in the afternoon. But generally, there's time around lunch or just before we go into session to just have a quick conversation about whatever bills are important to you, whether it be heard that day or someday in the future. It's important to have your voice heard, and share the insight that you have about whatever the issue is.
So, and should we be in a situation where they're not going to allow public access again and we end up canceling this? What do you feel like is the best way for constituents and our members to communicate with you?
The easiest way to communicate with me is definitely email. All of us have a legislative email address that goes directly to us or to our assistants. And I have, I make sure that my assistant keeps track of exactly what bills we've gotten emails for, how many we've gotten. If they're a form email, I generally get one form email, and then however many were sent in with that. But for me, the easiest thing to do is I want to hear the personal experience. I want to know exactly why you are advocating this way or that way. The form emails are great, but if you could give some personal aspect to it, it helps so much to be able to convince colleagues on one side or the other to support or oppose a piece of legislation based on those personal experiences.
That's great. It really does make a differentiating component when you communicate your own personal stories and experiences.
Absolutely. It makes a huge difference. I mean, we all know that no offense to you, Mariah, but the lobbyists are there. We know the lobbyists, we know the voices, and we know that they're being paid to advocate. Whereas if it's a person that's coming in, that's given a personal experience on something they're passionate about and something that they certainly feel passionate enough about to go out and either find an email address or find a phone number or even come to the Capitol, it makes a huge difference. And being, for me, being from Shreveport, the 3.5 hour drive to Baton Rouge, if I know a physician or anyone is coming down and taking a day off work to come to Baton Rouge to advocate for a particular issue, I know it's vitally important to their beliefs and something that I should take seriously. Whether I agree with it or not, it's a different issue. But something that I give more weight to that.
And I will say, I do tell my members all the time, I can lobby for you till the cows come home, but the one thing I can never do is be an MD. I didn't earn that. I have not been educated from it. There are a lot of nuances that I would never be able to explain. And any of you watching could probably ask Representative Presley, because he actually got to listen to me talk about pelvic exams in the last legislative session. Thank goodness Dr. Julia had written me up good notes the day that he was there, but I can only do what I can do. There are certain things that you must do.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and we've all. I mean, you're there. You're active. Certainly, the people on health and welfare are very familiar with your face and the issues that are important to the LSMS. But we really take the words and wisdom of our physician community seriously, especially when someone comes and testifies on a particular issue.
Wonderful. I thank you for your time. I think we're just about at the 15-minute mark now, and I'm trying to keep them at a point where people will listen to the whole thing. So is there anything that you think we've left out that you'd like to share?
I think we covered most of it. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk a little bit about the legislative session and what we're likely to experience in 2021. And I just want to say thank you so much to all of our physician community and to our medical community for the hard work, determination, and effort that you've put forth over the last year. There's no question that 2020 and into 2021 now has been a challenge for our healthcare providers with COVID. And I'm so grateful for the hard work and dedication that you put forth every day. Thanks so much.
We need to change those white coats to white capes.
That's it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Representative Presley. We appreciate your time and we look forward to seeing you.
Thanks so much. I look forward to seeing you all at the Capitol.